Welcome to Level Up Your Writing, presented by the Warminster Township Free Library. This video will be talking about senses in writing. As I mentioned at the end of the last video, the 5 senses are really valuable when establishing a setting. Sight, touch, smell, hearing, taste, they are all major ways that people experience or interpret the world they live in. But senses can also be used for purposes other than just descriptions. This video will go over some ways to incorporate the different senses into your writing. In a lot of cases, sight will be your most commonly used sense as you're writing, as it helps not only describe settings, but also things like movement and action. In addition, just like real people, if your characters have sight, that sense is likely to be the biggest or most immediate way they experience the world around them. So as you're writing down their experiences, what they see will be a large part of what you end up writing. Sight descriptions can include things like color, brightness, distance, movement, and size. However, the other senses are also important, and including them in your writing can be the key to more immersive storytelling. You don't need to include every sense in every scene, but using a variety of senses and not relying on just sight will allow you to create scenes that give a fuller picture of what is happening. After sight, hearing might be the sense you utilize the most, as it will show up in any conversation your characters have. Sound can also come from the environment, of course, and using sound when describing a setting can help you establish the atmosphere and mood of the scene. Hushed whispers versus joyful laughter, a trickling stream versus a powerful waterfall, the word choices you make when describing sounds can greatly impact the way a reader experiences a scene. Sound descriptions can include things like volume and pitch. The next sense is touch. Your first thought may come to feeling things with your hands, but there's also more to touch than that. The rest of the body also experiences touch. When it comes to touch, consider things like temperature, pressure, texture, firmness, and moisture. After touch is smell. This is a scent most people don't think about until they experience a strong one, so it might be best to use it sparingly. Smell is connected to memory, and good or bad smells can create a physical effect on the person, such as salivating at the fresh scent of cookies or gagging at the scent of rancid meat. Taste may be a sense you don't expect to use often unless your character does a lot of eating. However, taste isn't just related to food. Anytime a character has something in their mouth, they will taste it. Whether it's food, a character chewing on a pencil, or holding something in their mouth to free up a hand, or accidentally getting hair in their mouth, there's all sorts of ways you can use taste. In addition, other senses are intricately tied into taste. When a character tastes something, they will probably also be feeling it, as your tongue can and will feel things like texture, temperature, and more. A large part of taste is also smell, and sometimes you can almost taste really strong smells. So you might want to consider these other senses as you're describing taste. So what benefits do including the 5 senses in your writing have? Aside from portraying an immersive world and establishing your setting, it's also really useful for character building. How a character reacts to the senses they are experiencing, which senses they feel more attuned to at any given moment, how familiar these sensations are, what emotions arise as a result. These are all things that will inform the character development and help you create distinct and interesting characters. As with most aspects of writing I have covered in this series, balance and moderation is key. Try not to go overboard and include so many sensory details that your readers either get overwhelmed, bored, or annoyed. Think about which details are actually important. If you're calling attention to something, why are you doing it? Including specifics in your writing lets your reader know that they should pay attention to that detail for some reason. So it's sometimes best to spend more time describing things that you want the reader to specifically pay attention to, and less on the details you don't. If something stands out, that's a clue that it's significant. So throwing in too many extraneous details can lead to confusion as well, as the reader won't know what to pay attention to. In other words, unless you're making a point, try not to describe something in extreme detail just for the sake of it. When deciding which senses to use and in which order to use them in a scene, think about what the character would likely notice first about a scene, and why they notice it first. You can ask yourself if it would be the same for every character as well, because in some cases, the first sensory detail someone notices may be different than what somebody else notices first. This week's writing exercise will allow you to think critically about the choices you make when including sensory details. Write a scene where the sensory details are the star of the show. think carefully about which ones you're adding and what they add to the story you're telling. Consider the point of view and if this affects the details you include, and try to use a variety of senses. The next video will come in about 2 weeks after a short break.